Okay, our learning target is I can read and write ratios with three quantities and express equivalent ratios of three quantities. So all week we've been working on, and last week, ratios. And of course, writing ratios and finding equivalent ratios and simplifying ratios and real world ratio problems. So today's going to be very familiar to you, except for we're going to do ratios with three quantities instead of two. Okay, so just to remind you, you'll use skills that you already have with ratios to compare three things. The order of the numbers or the things that you are comparing matters. So pay extra close attention to that today. Okay, first problem we're going to do is an example with a visual. So we're just going to work on coming up with a ratio comparing the number of red circles to stars to green circles. So first thing we're going to do is just look at the number of stars. I count 4. The number of red circles, I'm going to group these three together. 2 more is 5, 6, 7. And green circles, I also see 4. Okay. Now, all we're going to do when we write our ratio, we're going to use this order right here. So red circles is going to go first. 7 stars to 4 stars to 4 green circles. So here is our ratio comparing the number of red circles to the number of stars to the number of green circles. Okay, so you would say this out loud, pronounce this ratio just like how you would with normal ratios, 7 to 4 to 4. Okay, now we're also going to use multiplication to find missing terms in equivalent ratios today. So this problem we're going to do first is familiar to you. There are only 2 terms. We have yogurt and berries. A smoothie cup is, I'm starting reading right here, a smoothie cup is 1 part yogurt to 2 part berries. So we have our initial ratio is this, 1 part yogurt. Yogurt is our first term, berries is our second term. And what we're going to do is use multiplication to find a missing term in an equivalent, meaning equal, ratio. If you use 3 cups of yogurt, how many cups of fruit will you need? So right here is where our question mark is our missing term. So think about how we've done this before. You can think about this kind of like simplifying a fraction if we are reducing, but in this case, look at the relationship between 1 and 3. What happens to this term 1 to get to that equal term of 3 cups of yogurt? Yeah, can you see that that is times 3 or multiplying times 3? So we're going to use multiplication over here, and we're going to multiply our 2 cups of berries for every cup of yogurt to find out how many cups of berries we will need if we use 3 cups of yogurt. So 2 times 3 is 6. Now look at these 2 ratios. We have 3 to 6 and 1 to 2. Think to yourself, what do you notice about them? Yeah, can you see right away that they're equivalent? Yeah, okay. Now let's try that out with 3 terms, okay? So this one is not going to have any context or be a word problem. We'll do a couple word problems next. We'll use multiplication to find the missing terms in ratios with 3 terms now instead of 2. So I'm just going to start by asking you to write this ratio on your board. 3 to 5 to 7. And we know that this ratio right here, I'm going to write this one in red, 9 to something is equivalent. They are equal. So that means if we have one of the terms here, see how we have this first term 3 and 9 on both of our ratios, we can kind of zoom in on this. Let me use my highlighter and look at the relationship between these 2 terms, figure out what we multiplied by or that factor there, and then we can find these other missing pieces. So ask yourself right now, what is the relationship between 3 and 9? And we know you can go both ways. It just depends on if you want to think about multiplication or division. So here's what's going on here. We're trying to figure out what times 3 equals 9, or if you want to think about that using division, is 9 divided by, sorry, I wrote that wrong. 9 divided by something equals 3, or 9 divided by 3 equals something. So this number here and this number here will be the same. Just depends on which way you want to think about it. I think most of you will probably choose this way, and that answer is 3, and that answer here would be 3. So what's happening here, let me erase this, I got a little messy, is we are multiplying that term times 3. So that means to find this missing term, we're just going to take 5 and times 3 and 7 and times 3. So our second term is going to be 5 times 3 is 15. And our third term is going to be 7 times 3, which is 21. So here is our new equivalent ratio. And the way we did that is by finding the relationship between these two numbers and then using that relationship to find our missing terms. Okay, let's do a word problem with this real quick. For a school fair, Lolita's parents donated 4 bottles of orange juice, 10 bottles of fruit punch, and 8 bottles of apple juice. Actually, this is just writing a ratio with 3 terms. So actually, we're going to skip this one. Sorry about that, because we've already done that. Let's go ahead and do this one. The number of dolls that Lisa, Mia, and Nina have are in the ratio of 6 to 4 to 7. Nina has 21 dolls. Now, one thing I want to caution you about today is you need to still pay really close attention to the order of these. So when I read this, watch this. I'm going to use my highlighter. What term is first? Lisa. Do you see that? So I'm going to put an L under her term. And then I see our second term is Mia. Let me use a different color. Mia. So I'm going to put an M under Mia. And our last term is Nina. So I'm going to put an N under Nina's term. Okay, now we also know that Nina has 21 dolls. So I'm going to actually rewrite this just so we can solve a little bit better. Give myself some more room to write. Let's start with our original ratio. So 6 to 4 to 7. And I'm going to put the girls' initials, first initials, Lisa, Mia, and Nina on top. And then what we're going to try and do is find out how many dolls does Lisa have if we know Nina has 21. Do you see how I knew to put that 21 right under the Nina? So Nina has to be the third term. So we're trying to figure out specifically Lisa, but we could also figure out Mia too. Okay, now we're going to use the information we have here. We only have Nina's terms to work off of. So you're going to go ahead and look at Nina's dolls, and you're going to see what is the relationship between 7 and 21. What did you do to 7 to get to 21? And that answer is times 3. So in order to make this ratio equivalent to this ratio, or what to do is continue to use that same pattern of times 3 for this term. 3 times 4 is 12. And times 3, 6 times 3 is 18. Okay, so there's our new ratio. Now, again, the question we're trying to answer was this. How many dolls does Lisa have? So looking at this, how many dolls does Lisa have if Nina has 21? And here would be your answer. You'd write this. Lisa has 18 dolls. Okay. Last thing we're going to do today is this. We're going to work on finding the missing term in a set of equivalent ratios. And we just did that a couple times using multiplication. Now I want to show you these problems because you might also have to use division today. So I'm going to just rewrite this first ratio, and then I'm going to write the second ratio with 3 terms that is equivalent right underneath. And part of the reason why I do that is because I think it's a little bit easier for me to see the relationship when they're on top of each other and kind of keep track of what term matches with what term when they're aligned vertically. Okay? So I'm just going to write, go ahead and do this one with me on your board. 15 to 5 to 20. Okay, and then we know we're going to be finding an equivalent ratio, and this equivalent ratio has some missing terms. So that's where that underline, we know 1, and then we're missing the second one too. So you could even replace this with a question mark and a question mark. That's what we're trying to find. Okay, kind of like the last couple problems we just did, do you notice that we only have one set of terms right here that we could possibly use to see our relationship between our first ratio and our second ratio? Do you see that? Yeah. And because we know that these are equivalent, what we can do is look at the relationship between 5 and 1. How do we get from 5 to 1? And we've been using multiplication to do this. So what do you know is happening? Is that increasing or decreasing from 5 to 1? Oh, it's decreasing. That means we need to use division. So we are going to divide by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. Now to find these two missing terms, all we need to do is continue with that. Divided by 5. 20 divided by 5 is 4. And 15 divided by 5 is 3. There you go. Is that what you got on your board? 3 to 1 to 4. And that's it for today.